Hello everyone. Today we are going to study direct and indirect questions. After that we will do some practice and finally I will have some suggestions for further study and practice. Let's see the difference first of all. Look at this dialogue. Where does she live? I don't remember where she lives, but I can give you her phone number. In this sentence, where does she live is a direct question. It is an independent question asked to get specific information. But in the second one, where she lives is a part of another question or another sentence. So this is an indirect question. Now, first of all, let's focus on direct questions. Let's remember different types of direct questions now. Yes/no questions, object questions, subject questions, and questions with prepositions. Now, we will focus on each type of question one by one. For yes/no questions, we expect the answer yes or no, and we change the place of the subject and auxiliary verb to make this type of question. Depending on the tense we use, we choose an auxiliary verb and then we change the places of the subject and the auxiliary verb to make yes/no questions. Have they ever been to Italy? Do you have to join the meeting? Now let's have a look at object questions. Object questions are also called open questions, and we use different question words to ask object questions depending on the information we want to get. We use a question word. It may be why, when, where, how. And after that we change the places of the word order is not very different from the yes/no question. We change the places of the auxiliary verb and the subject, and we make our questions. For example, in the first one, we want to learn the frequency of the action. How often does he go out? We ask, and we get the answer. She goes out once a week. And we want to learn the duration, so we choose the question word how long. And how long will you stay here? Yes, you see, will and you have changed places. And I will stay here for 2 days. And we want to learn who something belongs to, so we say whose car did you drive to work? And we answer, I drove my dad's car. Now let's see the subject questions. We ask subject questions if we want to learn something about the subject or if we want to learn the subject of the sentence. But be careful, this type of question is very different from the other types. For this type, we use the question word, but we don't use an auxiliary verb because we don't know the answer, we don't know the subject, and there is no subject because we don't know the subject. Who visits you every week? Who is at home? What happened? Or whose son entered the university? You see, the question words are directly followed by verbs. Who visits you? Who is at home? What happened? You see, there is no auxiliary verb and we don't know the subject, so there is no subject. So the question word is followed by the main verb of the sentence. But be careful, in subject questions we use the singular form of the verbs. Who visits you? Who is at home? Even if you expect a plural answer, we use a singular form of the verb. Now let's look at the questions with prepositions. The only difference with questions with prepositions is that we use either at the beginning or at the end of the question a preposition. Some verbs are used with prepositions, you know. like depend on, wait for, talk about. And if you use such a verb in your question, you have to use the preposition, and you can use that preposition at the end or at the beginning of the sentence. But remember, using prepositions at the beginning of the sentence is very formal. What are you talking about? You see, about is at the end of the sentence. Also, you can use the preposition in the beginning. About whom are you talking about? Be careful, if you use a preposition before who, we change it into whom. We don't use who, we use whom if you use a preposition at the beginning of the question. You see different types of questions altogether. In yes-no questions, there's no question word. And or for object questions, we have different question words depending on what we want to learn. And for subject questions, we don't use an auxiliary verb because we don't know the subject. So, and for questions with prepositions, you use a preposition at the end or at the beginning of the sentence. Now let's see indirect questions. Look at this dialogue. I don't want to come with you. Can you tell me why you don't want to come with me? I know where you want to go. I don't want to see the city center. Okay, let's go where you want to see. In this dialogue, as you see, all the questions are indirect questions. But be careful, the word order is very different from the direct questions. You see, there is no auxiliary verb, and we use the word order of a statement, not a question, to make indirect questions. And all these indirect questions are used as the object of another sentence or a question, you see. I know where you want to see. Okay, you see, where you want to see, we don't use any auxiliary verb here. After the question word, we directly use the subject, verb, and object. I mean a statement order, sentence order. Can you tell me why you don't want to come? As you see, we use the question word. After that, we use the subject. These questions, indirect questions, are in the sentence structure. And be careful, all these indirect questions are followed by the main verb of the sentence as the object of the sentence. But indirect questions can also be used as the subject of the sentence. Look at this dialogue. How often he goes out is not a secret. You are right, but who he meets is a secret. In these sentences, how often he goes out is the subject of the sentence, and it is followed by the main verb of the sentence. As you see, after how often, we just use subject, verb, and object. I mean the sentence word order, and again the main verb is. How often he goes out is the subject, is the main verb of the sentence. Who he meets is a secret. Okay, here is the main verb of another sentence. So who he meets is the subject of a sentence. Now let's have a look at indirect yes-no questions. Look at these dialogues. Are they going to join us? I don't know if they are going to join us. Or you can say, I don't know whether they are going to join us. To introduce indirect yes-no questions, you can use either if or whether. There's no difference between them. Maybe whether is a bit more formal, but there is a slight difference in usage. You can also say, I don't know if they are going to join us or not. You can, if you like, you don't have to, but if you like, you can add or not to introduce indirect yes-no question. But be careful about the places. I am not sure whether there is a cache point here, near here or not. Or you can say, I am not sure if there is a cache point near here or not. You can, with whether or if, you can use or not at the end of the sentence. But if you want to use or not just after before whether, you can use it after whether, not if. Or not can be followed, whether can be followed by or not directly, but if cannot. If you use if, you use or not at the end of the sentence. Now, it's time to do some practice. Now I want you to pause the video and write questions for the underlined part of the sentences. Here you can check your answers. And here another practice. Be careful. In this practice, you are going to ask questions for the information in the parentheses and complete the sentences. Pay attention to the question type. It may be a direct question or an indirect question. For example, let's look at the first two questions. I have no idea, it says, so this is an indirect question because it is the subject of another sentence. But here it starts with where and it ends in question mark, no other details. So this is an independent question. So this is a direct question. Pause the video and write your answers. Yes, you can check your answers. And the last exercise is a error recognition exercise. Decide if the sentences are correct or not and correct the mistake if there are any. These are the answers. And these are my suggestions for further study and practice. And if you like, you can make a list of 10 questions about what you wonder about your teacher or classmates. Have a nice day. This is the end.